Hi everybody, welcome to Healthy Togetherness. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Healthy Togetherness is a cooking channel that focuses on techniques as opposed to the recipes because cooking techniques, they apply to all sorts of culinary lifestyles. They don't change. The ingredients may change, but the techniques don't. So whether you are just cooking for a regular simple family dinner or something much more elaborate for guests, whether you are someone who has meat and vegetables, or someone who is vegan, or someone who caters to other healthy lifestyles, the techniques change. I mean, the techniques stay the same, but the ingredients may change. All right. So I am very excited today because we are going to be learning so much techniques out of a very simple dish. And someone made a request for a cheese souffle, and in that in that one simple dish, so many techniques can be learned. Right? So we're going to start off with our ingredients. All right. We have 3 whole eggs, which we're going to separate, 3 tablespoons of flour, 3 tablespoons of butter, plus a little bit more, which we're going to use to butter our ramekins. We have nutmeg, white pepper, evaporated milk, 1 can, and Gruyere cheese. This is 6 ounces that I've already shredded. These 2 are optional, and I'll mention why they're optional later. But grated Parmesan cheese also, or Parmesan cheese that is in a block and I've taken the time to go ahead and grate. All right, let's get started. Thank you, Scout. First thing we're going to do is prepare our ramekins. Right? So I've taken the time to went ahead and buttered 3 of these ramekins. This is very simple to do. All you do is just take some butter in your impeccably clean hands and just rub it around, all around the ramekin. And there you go. You are done buttering the ramekin. And we can leave it like this, but in order to add more flavor to it, here's what we can do. We can take some of the Gruyere cheese that we've taken and just throw some in here and then rotate it. And whatever sticks to it is going to be perfect, except for there, stick. Okay. Now I mentioned earlier that these are optional. We have the grated Parmesan cheese and also Parmesan cheese in a block that I've grated, and these can be used instead of that to give it even a more different flavor, right? So the same technique. You just take the grated Parmesan cheese, run it around, and if you actually have more ramekins, just roll it over the next one. Okay. And whatever that is whatever sticks to it is perfect. I'm going to do the same thing here. Alright. Now if you have these at home as opposed to the block of cheese, this works really well too because they're crumbled, they're very fine. Just put some in here. Rotate it. See, I like this, the way it sticks, because it coats it really well as opposed to these. Because the grating wasn't as fine as this one, you get a little bit less coverage. But anyone that you choose is absolutely fine. Okay, these are done. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to separate our eggs. There are tools out in the market that you can use to separate the eggs, make it a lot easier on you. So this is one of those tools. I'll show you how it works. Just kind of put it onto the rim. Take your egg, crack it, on a flat surface as opposed to a rounded surface, and what that does is it prevents the shell from going into the egg itself and breaking the yolk and quite possibly introducing bacteria. So just break it and separate it. And you'll notice that I separated in a bowl. This is a dedicated bowl, and this is going to be our insurance policy in case the yolk breaks. Right? So this is how this one works. And we just take the yolk, put it on a small container, and we'll put the egg white on a larger bowl. The larger bowl, because we're going to whip it later.
Whip it good.
To make them around. Now you don't really need one of these. I'm going to show you a technique that is very simple. Break the yolk. Open it up into your bowl. And again, take your impeccably clean hands and just gently scoop out the yolk. And just let the egg white come out. Okay, and there we go. All right. Okay. And then this goes in here. So the reason again for using this bowl is in case the egg yolk does break, I don't contaminate the container with the egg yolk nor the container with the egg white. Again, it's our kind of an insurance policy here. Go. How easy was that? Alright, we're done with these. We're going to go ahead and set them aside also, and we'll get on to our next section. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our actual sauce or batter for the souffle. And that starts off with making a roux. A roux is a thickener. It is what we're going to use to thicken our milk. And basically it's just an equal portion of butter and flour. So I have 3 tablespoons of butter here and 3 tablespoons of flour. This is going to make a very thick roux so that we have a thick sauce. Have your pan heating up. It doesn't have to be on a fancy electric stove here. You can just use a standard stove, but keep the fire low so that we don't color or burn the butter. So 3 tablespoons. Wow, so hot. Okay. And that's been going for a while. Alright, and just kind of rotate it until all the butter melts. Now that that's melted, we'll take our 3 tablespoons of flour and just dump it all in there. And what we're going to do is make a thick paste out of it. The important thing here is to have all the flour coated with the butter. If we don't coat all the flour with the butter, we're going to have clumps when we add the milk. Okay, and now that's done. We're going to go ahead and continue to stir it and cook it for about 2 minutes. Right? And what that's going to do is cook out the raw flour flavor. Try saying that 3 times fast. Okay, so our roux has been cooking for about 2 minutes now. Right? It's taken on a nice golden color, and that's not all from the butter. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add our milk. Now I've chosen evaporated milk for this, but you don't have to use evaporated milk. You can use regular milk. I would definitely choose the whole milk as opposed to the less fat version of the milk, just because of flavor, right? But if you prefer the skim milk or the 2% milk, feel free to go ahead and do it. It'll still work. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to add the milk in small portions so that we don't have lumps. All right, we'll add a little bit. We'll wait for the flour, for the roux to absorb all of that, and then add our next milk.
Why don't we add it all at the same time?
Okay, we don't add all of it in the same time because there is going to be so much milk in there that the roux will just kind of clump up, right? And then we're going to need to use a whisk to try to get all the lumps and to break up apart all those lumps to get a smooth sauce. And using a whisk doesn't really guarantee that you're going to have a smooth sauce. Also, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit more here. Right. Also, depending on your whisk and your pan, this is the whisk we're going to use, you're not going to be able to get to the corners unless you like really jab it in there and try to get those corners. You're going to have flour at the very corner and you're not going to be able to get it. Again, depending on the size of your whisk and the type of pan you use. Okay. So this is your best guarantee that you won't have any lumps. See how smooth that is becoming? Okay. And by the way, the person asking those wonderful questions is my wife, Roberta. Thank you very much, dear.
You're welcome.
Alright, so now we're not going to get any more lumps here. Everything is nice and smooth. Go ahead and add the rest. Okay, now while we are waiting for that to come back to temperature and thicken, the flour is going to thicken more as the temperature, as it starts to reach a boiling point. This is a good time to go ahead and season our sauce. Oh, by the way, once we've taken milk and added it to the roux, that actually has a French name for it. It's called a bechamel sauce. It is one of the mother sauces or foundational sauces that you can build other products from. So this is a bechamel sauce. And we're going to season that with white pepper. White pepper, just because we don't want, or I don't want any specks of black when we're enjoying our, what do you call that? Our souffle. Keep stirring also, because you don't want the bottom of this to scorch. Okay. And then next thing we're going to do is add some nutmeg. Just take, you can use ground nutmeg, but grating your own nutmegs, it's more fresh compared to the ones that are grated. And how much you want to do, what I do is I just go ahead and cover the surface of the nutmeg, also the surface of the sauce, and then stir that in and then give it a taste, give it a try. And then as far as the white pepper goes, about an eighth of a teaspoon, or half of a quarter teaspoon. Let's give it a try. We're not adding any salt to this because our cheese will have the saltiness that we're looking for. Nice, but I think a little more of the nutmeg. What I'm tasting for when I am adding the nutmeg is I want to be able to taste that spice without being overpowering. I want my guests to kind of say, I taste something, but I'm not quite sure I know what it is. Nutmeg is a very strong spice, so if you add too much, it's gonna be like, pow, that's a nutmeg. Alright, let's give this another try. There we go. Okay, so what we're trying to do is just get this sauce to be warm enough so that it can melt our cheese. It's not like away. We don't need that anymore. Okay. We're going to add our cheese just a little bit at a time until this. Then when this set melts, then we'll add our next one. And the reason for that is if we added all of these cheese at once to our sauce, it's going to drop the temperature so much that it'll clump. Just take it and stir it. And our temperature is still low. Now this sauce, well, because we're adding cheese to it, is called a Mornay sauce. So when you take a bechamel sauce, one of the foundational sauces, and then you add cheese to it, it takes on a different name. It's called a Mornay sauce. And a Mornay sauce doesn't have to be Gruyere. It's traditionally Gruyere. It doesn't have to be. If we were going to make mac and cheese, we would use a sharp cheddar cheese, and that would be the base for our mac and cheese. Also, for our souffle, Gruyere cheese is a very nice cheese to use, but it doesn't have to be Gruyere. If you have a sharp cheese that you like, go ahead and use that. Another popular option would be goat cheese. That's a very popular cheese to use for souffle. Looks like I can go ahead and add the rest of it. Alright. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this off.
Should they be turning off their stoves then too?
Yeah, go ahead and take it off, because all we needed was just enough heat to melt the cheese, and we're actually going to not want as much heat in here because we're going to be adding our egg yolk, and we'll have a different technique for that, but we want to prevent the egg yolk from curdling or turning into a scramble. So That is so good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to incorporate our egg yolk into this to make it a richer sauce. We're going to go ahead and just kind of scramble this a little bit. Okay, we have scrambled the egg yolks nicely. Okay, and the idea now is to incorporate the egg yolk into our sauce. But if we dump all of this in right now, because the sauce is so hot, what we're going to get is like a scramble, basically. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a technique called tempering, which is to just take a little bit of the sauce. We're going to take about 1/3 of the sauce and slowly incorporate it into our egg. Mix this in. And what we're doing is we're bringing the egg yolk to the same temperature, or about the same temperature, as our sauce. So, start adding a little bit more now.
How can you tell when it's the same temperature? Are you just going by the feel?
It's about 1/3 of this. Now I'm actually a little bit fortunate because I'm using a metal bowl, and I can feel how warm it is through the metal bowl on my hand. But once you get about 1/4 to about 1/3 of your sauce in here, that's about right. Okay, so that's good enough. Oops. Get rid of this. We're done with that one. Now we can go ahead and safely incorporate this. Okay, now this can now be set aside. It's almost done. So let me set it aside, clean up a little bit, and then we'll get to whipping the egg whites. Okay, our next step is to make a meringue out of the egg whites that we separated earlier today. So very simple. All you need is a whisk. There are different types of whisks out there. If you have a whisk that's very stiff, that's usually just used for blending. You can have a very stiff, whatever it is that you're blending, and the wires won't move. It's very good for that. These ones are softer. They kind of bend, right? And so this is what's going to be used to whip air. That's what it's intended for, is to whip air into the into egg whites, or if you have a heavy cream, same idea. So all you do, have a bowl, tilt the bowl so that egg white is always coming down to the base of it, and then just whip. This is where you're going to get your arm exercise. Now, of course, if you have a hand blender or a stand mixer, you can do this too, but I'm kind of assuming that We don't have those devices. We don't have those at home. So we can just use a regular whip or whisk. And the idea here is just to keep whipping like this. The raw egg will always settle to the bottom, and that's why we have it tilted. If your arm gets tired, you can try to do it with this hand. I'm not ambidextrous, so this doesn't go as well for me. Right. Another thing you can do is you can just lay it flat and you can go do a figure 8. That works well too. But for me, I just have to go ahead and go for it. Okay, and what we're waiting for is a stiff peak. So if you'll notice, if you just take your whisk and then you have a peak, this one's kind of still soft. See how it kind of, right? We want that egg white to have a stiff peak, which basically means we've incorporated about as much air as it can take. It is possible to over whip this, and think of it as a balloon. If all we're trying to do here is get more air and more air into our balloon to maximize it, but there is a point where it'll pop. Like that. See how that one is? That one's like, that's a peak. That's a stiff peak right there. Okay, now that we have our egg white whipped, we're going to go ahead and incorporate it into our sauce. And what this does is that's what's going to create the lift in our souffle as it cooks. So with that in mind, we've just taken so much time and effort and pain into making our meringue. We don't want to lose any of that air, so we're not going to just put it in here and just mix. We're going to be very gentle on it. All right. So this technique is called folding. What you do is just pop it in there, and you're going to take the center and move it up, center and then move it up. All right. And you're going to just do this a little bit at a time.
So you're not stirring it.
Not stirring it. We want to preserve as much of that air as we possibly can. All right, that looks good. Okay. Can't get it for the camera. There we go. All right.
Do you have to do it until you like see how there's some lumps in there? Do you have to do it until those lumps go away, or?
Yeah, as much as possible. I mean, we don't want to sacrifice losing all the air, just trying to capture that one little bit of meringue.
How long do you fold for then?
Like you said, you know, try to get it as smooth as possible. Try to get it so that the meringue is nicely incorporated into our sauce. There's no time. You just look at it, and we have a little bit of bubbles here. I can live with that. That'll work fine. Alrighty, that's good. I don't think I mentioned this when we first started, but I have my oven preheating to 350 degrees to get it ready for our soufflés. Now what we're going to do now is just gently scoop out our mix and pour it into our ramekins. These are 4-ounce ramekins. And I mentioned that because if you have larger ramekins, you'll have to see how much of the batter will accommodate the size of ramekin you have.
How much do you want to fill it to?
I want to come as close to the rim as possible without overflowing. Okay. And we're going to clean that rim anyway. Okay, so that's not going to be enough for another thing, sadly, but that's okay. Alright, so now that you have this filled this way, what we need to do is get rid of all of these all of this stuff where it's touching the rim, because that'll cook first, because it's on the outside, it's exposed more to the heat. It's going to cook first, it's going to stick to our ramekin, and then it won't puff up because it's going to restrict that that lift. So what you do with your impeccably clean hands, you just take your finger and just run your thumb around it. Alright. This one looks okay, but we're going to do it anyway. And this one too, that's going to bake first. It's going to form a crust, and then no more lift, or this is going to lift like sideways. All right. Now this is ready to go into the oven, but I want to share something with you. If right at this point, you can actually store this into the refrigerator so that if you're expecting guests in the evening, you can make this in the morning, keep it inside the refrigerator, and then when your guests come, that's when you can go ahead and put it into the oven, and your souffle will be ready just right when your guests get here, because this is a dish that needs to be served immediately, right? But in addition to that, what we're going to do, we're going to take 2 of these and we're going to go ahead and reserve it just for another day, maybe a later thing. What I like to do is I like to take a little label to let me know that what it is and when I made it. Just like that, I just wrote it on a piece of tape. Alright, and we're just going to go ahead and add it onto here. And that's what happens when we buy a 99-cent piece of tape from the store. He suggests this one in here. And we'll go ahead and take some cling film.
And so when we cook those, then we have to just make sure to run our fingers again, just in case?
Yes. When you put the cling film on, it's going to touch this and it's going to not give us a clean side anymore. And so when you are ready to bake it, just clean the rim again with your fingers. Would you impeccably clean fingers? Now this can stay in the refrigerator, I would say no more than 2 days. We do have a raw egg in there, so just for safety reasons, no more than 2 eggs in 2 days in the refrigerator. Okay. So that's why the labeling and the date are very important. So I'll go ahead and pop this in the refrigerator later. In the meantime, right, when you're cooking a souffle, put it on a tray, right? One reason is that it just makes it very easy to take in and out of the oven, but in addition to that, if the souffle does kind of overflow, it'll overflow onto the tray and makes life easier. You don't have to go clean your oven. So we're going to go ahead and put this in a 350-degree oven, and it'll be there for about 15-20 minutes, right? The oven will vary, so the time is going to vary. Here we go. All right, and we'll be back. Alright, so while we're waiting for our souffle to finish cooking in the oven, we're going to make a very simple salad, and this will make a very nice light lunch. Right? So I've got some spring greens here, some leftover carrots in the refrigerator, cucumber, red onion, salad dressing, and we're going to add some of our leftover cheese that we grated earlier. Put this here just so we have space for our souffle there. Okay.
Hold on.
Okay, this is a very simple salad. You can have any kind of salad that you'd like to go along with your souffle. It's what I had available in the refrigerator. Any salad will go well with that for a light lunch. Right? We're gonna go ahead and finish waiting for our souffle, and then we'll go ahead and plate. Okay, so our souffle is done, and it looks like it did spill over. So I'm kind of glad that this happened, so I can demonstrate why we have the tray. All right. There. So not a big deal, because your guests, if you do it right, will not even know that that ever happened. All you do is just take this, scrape it along the side, and see, it looks perfect. Oh, but it is hot, so be very, very, very careful. Right. And again. So again, serve immediately, because this will start to collapse. It will start to deflate. Now, shall we give it a try? Where's my spoon? All right, here we go. It should have a nice custardy texture to it. Look at that. Oh, that is so nice and cheesy, and it's creamy. Oh, that is so nice. At this point, I'd probably just go ahead and have the custard and have the souffle and have the salad later, but this is a very nice and very light lunch. Okay. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you appreciate it. If you make the souffle, leave some comments for me, and also again, the recipe is going to be in the description. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Another test that I'm probably going to cut this out. What?
It's recording.
I'm probably going to cut this out, but another test that you can do is you can do this.
Nah, don't cut that out. Wait, pause.